Thank you very much, Mark, and thanks everyone. Just to clarify this point, I was the Group Chief Medical Officer up until the 31st of March, and then I stepped down after 4 years to be the Deputy Group Chief Medical Officer, really because I've got a bit bored arguing about money for the whole time. So, and actually to create some bandwidth to do some different things. So let's just clarify that point. So I'm Jim. When I was a proper doctor, I was a GP in Kendal all those years ago. I then moved out of that into management, worked in primary care trusts. I was then the deputy head of the School of Medicine at UCLan when we set up the new medical school. I'm telling you this because it's contextual, by the way, not because I want you to know my whole CV. And then I became the medical director at Blackpool, so I've been in this room quite a lot over the years. I think two great achievements for me when there, because it was the COVID times. We established a CRDC in Blackpool from Blackpool Teaching Hospital, which was a massive boost to morale, I think. I think these issues around research collaborations and research momentum are highly significant in the way we all feel about the systems we're working in. And I also recruited a consultant in public health in Heather Catt. Sadly, Heather's not still there, but I think some of her impact is visible in some of the work that's gone on across Blackpool since. Then I went to Liverpool to become the Chief Medical Officer in Liverpool. And at the time, so 4 years ago, Luft, as it was in a certain amount of disgrace with the regulators, the CQC and NHS England. And our task as a new executive team was to improve, get out of that regulatory space. And we did that through a series of fairly basic clinical governance strategies, to be honest with you. Make sure you do the basics right, make sure your medicines management is safe, and so on and so forth. But a key part of that strategy was to build our research agenda in its broader sense. And that included both increasing recruitment and retention in studies run within Luft, but also about making sure as an anchor institution and being socially responsible, we thought about our role as a major teaching hospital, university teaching hospital in Liverpool. What was and what is our responsibility to the wider system? And my perception, having worked across the region and plenty of other places over time, is that lots of large institutions can be somewhat misunderstood and feared, I think, by colleagues. And it's partly because they have their own gravitational pull. The bigger you get, the more gravitational pull there is. I've seen that happen clinically because you develop a core of real experts who move from being secondary experts to tertiary experts. And there's always a risk of de-skilling then as colleagues out in peripheral hospitals or peripheral systems start to refer increasingly into this big centre. And I think that happens from primary care to secondary care. It probably happens from community to primary care to secondary care to tertiary care. And that is a route to madness, I think. So we have to do things to try and turn those pieces around. So I don't think large teaching hospitals are in themselves avaricious. I think it's an accident of history. And the key thing is for them to be socially responsible and thoughtful about the role they play across the system. So part of our strategy then at Luft was to think about how we engage with the wider world when it comes to research and innovation. And that therefore included actively bidding to host a commercial research delivery centre, which we were successful in doing, which is already up and running and will be significant in terms of its relationship to ARC. I think what Mark and Ben are saying is the world's moving a little bit since the O'Shaughnessy report. UK PLC, it's existential to UK PLC, isn't it, to partner with industry to make sure resource is moving into the system from less than traditional sources in order to make sure we've optimized the amount of resource we've got. So that recognition of that kind of relationship is important. So CRCDC, Luft hosts Liverpool Health Partners, which within Liverpool and Merseyside is intended to be a coming together of the HEIs and the NHS. I've enjoyed a theme in that debate about the role of general practice in Liverpool Health Partners. And one of the things I championed over the years when I was, let's say, at NHS England in Lancashire was to make sure that GPs became actively involved in recruitment and retention. And of course, we know that GP practices are highly successful, both in interventional studies and in observational studies, and we've seen a real increase in that space. So the points I'm trying to get across are that it was of strategic significance to Luft, now University Hospitals of Liverpool Group, to play a part in these kind of spaces. And as we had some honest concerns about the capacity, if you like, of integrated care boards moving forward, I think in a sense one can see that anxiety was well-founded as we see real ructions, then we felt as University Hospitals Liverpool Group we were well placed to offer a stable NHS partner for this whole endeavour. And I enjoyed going to London with Mark and other colleagues to bid to the panel, and of course we were successful in that process. So you know, feather in the cap to the whole of ARC, and felt very, very nicely within Luft. Now, just on that point, another bit of our strategy, which we were encouraged very much to do by a previous NHS England regime, was to develop a group model in Liverpool. And so UHLG is now Luft, Liverpool University Hospitals, Liverpool Women's Hospital, and also Liverpool Heart and Chest Hospital. And I think there is a kind of message here from me which is about a lot of the argument which came from the previous regime at NHS England was really based around economies of scale. Can you bring organisations together and take out cost? My experience is that's quite difficult to do, but I think there are scale advantages that come. And if you think about the interdependencies of clinical care and of research, all sorts of opportunities have already emerged by bringing these organisations into a group model. And I make that point because I think that's what this is about. The opportunities for us, if you'll excuse the phrase, to be better together, to think about the interdependencies right across the system are significant and not to be dismissed. But they don't come without some effort. So there's a kind of entropic piece here, isn't there? We have to put energy in to keep people together and make it work. And this is a fabulous example of that. So I want to reassure everyone that UHLG sees itself as a responsible host to ARC, that we will manage the money faithfully and with good governance. And it's not about trying to draw everything into Liverpool and Merseyside. I mean, I feel strongly about that and would always champion that cause. This is about the Northwest ARC. So that's a bit about UHLG as a host. Then I am privileged to have been asked to chair the subcommittee to take over from Professor Jenny Poppe, who's due to arrive, I think, isn't she, a little while later. And I hope I've kind of convinced you that I'm reasonably well placed through my experience of having worked in Cumbria and in Lancashire and in Cheshire and Mersey to do that. I feel this is an NIHR initiative, isn't it? So it is about the NHS taking a lead role in this work, notwithstanding this is clearly a partnership between HEIs and social care and the voluntary sector and the NHS. But I think there is an existential piece for the NHS here, which is that unless we think about population health better, unless we think about patient pathways in a more holistic way, actually we can't cope with the increasing demands that we're experiencing. And certainly my ambition now in the next phase at UHLG is, if possible, to make the hospital smaller, not bigger. That we think about the 10-year plan, we think about the secondary to primary care shift, which is built into this bid way before that plan was released. That we think about that because actually it's fundamental to the survival, I think, of how the NHS functions. So we can't simply keep putting more people on corridors in A&E departments and so forth. It's another route to madness. So maybe even more than the first ARC, Mark, I think ARC 2 is highly significant. It's well written. There are some wonderful people involved in it. We don't quite know how it will evolve, do we, over the next 5 years? So I hope as a chair of a steering committee, I can make sure that we seize the opportunities that arise inevitably through that time, that we govern well and responsibly, and we are as collaborative and as constructive as we possibly can be. And I intend to discharge those duties faithfully. And on that happy note, I'll leave that, I think. Thanks.